Hello, welcome back. Continue on our Quicks14Blog vblog for game development programming, part 4 of the GUIs dialogue class. Continuing on with it. So we have the basics in there. We have an actual working dialogue. So now it's time to tweak it out and actually make it a little more functional and more dynamic and look proper. And one of the biggest areas of where that is the actual label or message or whatever you want to call it that's in the box. Each box, whether it's the message box, the confirmation box, or a actual input box, there is of course label with instructions or information and things of that nature, and we want to make sure we can display it properly. So basically the code you're going to see here and that you are seeing here is me getting ready to manipulate that and put that into play for the actual message box. We are limited of course by the size, and we want to make sure it draws out properly. Otherwise it'll really mess up. So I'm going to start making out some subs and things of that nature, and I actually struggle with this a little more than I probably should have, and you're going to see the start of that here, and some of you know how this works. Are going to go, oh lord. That's what you're going to do. You're going to go, oh lord. I hadn't done string manipulation in a while. First of all, it's not really an excuse, it's just kind of what led up to it, and I hadn't done string manipulation in a while as it is. And second of all, we got to keep in consideration that our font, our strings, our text that we're drawing on the screen is based off an image. And so my math was wonky and how I did things was wonky, and it took some time, probably longer than it should have, to really get it down and working, but it does work. And you'll definitely see that in the next vblog. But you're going to see the start of how that comes together here. And the logic sound, and I guess that's why I thought I wouldn't have to actually sit down and do any basic logic stuff on it and actually writing out a flow chart or anything of that nature. I figured I'll just do it in my head and I'll go with it, because I've done string manipulation before, and it probably would have saved me some headaches if I actually would have sat down for even 10 minutes and actually just thought about it more in detail and actually wrote some things down. So on hindsight, I probably should have done a little more planning on this. I mean, it sounds simple and everything, but since it's the first time doing it, and on top of that I haven't done string manipulation in a while, it would have helped. Obviously now I've been doing a lot of string manipulation, so it hasn't been too bad lately, but it definitely would have helped in hindsight back then. So some things to take away from this. Otherwise the logic, the basic logic, and the basic idea was sound. It just probably took a little more than it probably should have. You also have probably noticed, if you haven't already, that I seem to be over mathy sometimes. That's kind of a downfall of me. Sometimes I make things over mathematically more complicated than they really are, and I've done that a few times. In fact, I recently did it in another piece of code for the editor. So yeah, it happens, and it's definitely something for me to work on and to continue to grow on. Everybody has their strong and low points, and it's probably one of mine. This is basically not only to make it look good and clean, but to allow it to be as flexible as possible. So whatever we use it for and whatever text we pass to it or string we pass to it for its label, it'll actually display properly in the box the way we want, within the limits of our dialog box. So it's actually quite important, even though it is really technically is just an aesthetic piece. But since it is a message box, dialog box, or confirmation box, input box, it actually is pretty important, and that's why I worked on it. Again, I just took too much more time on it than I probably should have. So you're not going to see all of it here. You're going to see the start of it here and a good portion of it. I'm going to explain a lot about what I'm going on, and you're going to see a lot of changes in the next vblog with this. I will skip as much of the debugging as I possibly can, but I will show some of it, of course, just to show how I figured out what I was doing wrong and how I fixed it, because it is very, very important. But that's all I have for this part. So again, if you want to continue to contribute, please throw me an email, quickshot14@gmail.com. Don't forget to check the boards at Chaos Rift as I update them, and of course check back here for more. Please subscribe if you like it. Here's the commentary. Alright, so I figured this bears a little explanation of what we're doing, because a lot to take in here. But essentially I'm setting up this function here called breakdown text. What we're after is in case there's multiple lines or we have a long string and everything of message or whatever, whether it's confirmation input box or of course the message box, and we've only got so much room to post, instead of it just drawing right off the dialog box and looks horrible, we're going to set it up where it has a possibility of creating multiple labels up to a limit, and anything after that limit is just trashed, just left, thrown away, whatever. Later on we could implement some arrow buttons if we wanted and actually make it scrollable, but for now we'll just do that. What happens here at breakdown text is it gets ran before any of the labels are made. It's going to return the amount of how many labels that we're going to need, and what's passed to it, of course, is the actual text that we put in, and also the array that it's going to be stored in the other function. So, and that's done by reference again, since it's being done here, and it makes things easier that way. So we'll probably have to put some sort of cleanup code, but usually when you're done with the dialog it's trashed, so it's not a big deal, and this only happens when it's made new. So obviously when we come down to recreating our text, that will change, but for now this will work fine for what we're doing. So what we're doing, we have three variables here that are in the actual function. Int is an integer, and it's basically our index count for the array. Int2 is another integer, and actually I can just set it to 150 here instead of down here. And that's basically the max length that I've decided upon. I probably could do longer than that, but just for testing's sake we'll do 150. Right now this is going to be quote-unquote hard-coded because all the dialogues have the same size and we'll be using the same font. It's not really going to be changed. That might change later, obviously, but for now it'll work. So the first thing we do is find out the actual length, exactly how long the piece of text we're passing here is. If it's less than 150, I should actually say less or equal to 150, then then it's okay. We don't need to break it down, nothing. We just need one label. We can go ahead and we put it into the array, and then we go ahead and just pass a 1 as the total labels, because we only need one label. Otherwise, if it's not, it'll continue on and we need to break it down. So the first thing we do is a little for loop, and all this does really is it starts at 0. We do a little math. Oh God, help us, math. Or we take the length, exactly how long it is. We divide it by 150, since that's our max length we're after. And then we go ahead and round that up to get an amount of labels that we're going to need. Then we go ahead and minus it by 1, since we're doing a zero-based index on the count here, 0 to 1. That's why we do that. Honestly, because of that, yeah, I still need int. So that's why that's there for, because it starts 0 and then 1, then 2, then 3, 4. So if this came up with 6 labels we needed, and we're starting at 0, if we went to 6 it would have a problem because it wouldn't find any more string to use. So basically just zero-based index stuff. So then we go ahead and actually process it. We just put it into the array at its position, and it's basically the substring. We just do int2 minus 150 to get the starting. Excuse me. Actually, I should do, index 2 minus 150 to get the starting, and then we go ahead and do index 2 or integer 2 for the end. And then we go ahead and basically counter up our little integers here. So int becomes int plus 1, and then int2 comes int2 plus 150 to get the next max. And that'll pretty much do it. I think this is right. I don't know if I need to add an extra. It seems right, because if you start at 150 and we minus it by 150, we'll get 0. And obviously if we start at 300 and minus 150, we'll start at 150. So to me that sounds right. I don't think it's an issue right now, but we'll see. And then after that, after it's all done, putting everything in the array, then it just simply returns the integer, which was the array number, adds 1 to it so we get a proper count, and returns that back to our total labels. So that's all it does. So sounds complicated probably if you've never done it, but it's pretty simple really. And this will allow us to actually add it pretty easily without having to do a whole lot here. So once that's done, then we can actually start adding the labels, and that's pretty much what I'm going to get ready to add here. And this is basically replacing these here, and it will be done in a sort of a for loop, of course. Is probably the easiest way to do it. So that's what's next.